tonight we concluded the chapter with the bottom line. Everything we've been discussing about Torah. What does it mean to us practically? In 36, we connected this to bringing redemption. In 37, we spoke of the strategy, how we are bringing redemption. And understanding the strategy, we understood the enormous significance of the commandment of charity. And we explained how, in the most efficient way possible, most time-saving way possible, we are quickly moving the klipas noiga energy of this world to God's side, to God's side, to God's side, shift this world to the side of God to bring redemption. And then we said, but there's something also amazing called Torah study, which is unique and special in many ways, and especially in understanding the concept of redemption. We said we had already discussed Torah study. In chapter 5, we said it's the only food of your soul. It's the only thing that feeds your soul is Torah study. And through Torah study, you and God join and embrace and fuse like in no other way possible. And we deepened this in chapter 23, where we said that the fusion of the Jew with God on the level of his soul through Torah is not like when one does the commandments. When one does the commandments, you can be very, very close, very bonded, but you're still two entities. With Torah study, you're one. And there's no separation. And now we're saying, especially in terms of redemption, we want to shift and give to God the animal. Here, through Torah, we give the garments of thought and speech, the inner garment. And more significantly, here we give the animal soul herself. Till now it was only garments. Now it's the animal soul herself, because the animal soul's intellect, as we learn Torah, we understand, not just on my godly soul I understand, not just on my human brain I understand, on the intellect of my animal soul understands everything we're saying tonight, unless you're spacing out. If you are focused, your godly soul's intellect understands, your human intellect understands, and your animal intellect understands. So your animal intellect is part of the Torah study. Your animal's intellect shifts, not just her garment, not just her expressions of action or thought, speech. No, she herself, the intellect of the animal becomes on the side of God as you study Torah. We're giving God the animal in a way that we can't do with anything else. The inner garments of speech and thought, the animal soul herself, the intellect. And we said Torah contains God like nothing else does. Torah is God's thoughts, God's mind, while the commandments are God's body. And your energy, obviously, is much more in your mind than in your arms or legs or torso. So God is in Torah like in nothing else. And that's why, in a sense, it's the best thing for our soul. Even though we were told, if there's a commandment that has to be done and there's no one else around to do it, stop and do it, because you have a mission and you're supposed to turn over this world. And as Sarah said, we're supposed to bring redemption right now. And every other opportunity we have, every opportunity that comes our way, every chance we have, grab it and go for it, because we're here to change the world. But if someone else can change the world, if someone else can do that commandment, and you're in the middle of studying, keep learning, because nothing is going to feed your soul like learning. And that's why we said a certain Tana, certain sage of the Mishnah, said to his soul, for your sake I study, for your sake I learn. You're so lucky. You're in such an awesome space, because as I learn, you're just getting God like no other way possible. Wow, life is great. And that's what we did thus far. And we are really close to the end of this very long chapter. So this is very exciting. And in the end, focus on another, really two, we can say, very special additional qualities, all related to God being in Torah. Now, I don't know if this helped anyone over this past week, if anyone was more motivated to study or more focused when they studied. Remember, to get all these advantages, you actually have to be learning. Sometimes we dive through our learning, but that's good too, because if we stop, we might never get to doing it for real. But of course, for real means I do understand. Ideally, my brain's not going in other directions. Even more ideally, I have an intention, I have a thought, this is for God's sake. But at least on the very baseline, I'm concentrating and I'm understanding. Hopefully, this week will give you something that will carry you over despite all the distractions you experience. V'hine, hamshacha ba'arazu, this drawing down of God, she'adam mamshech omeir me'aras or sof barachim, that we can draw down from God's infinite energy when we study, when we are invested, when we're mentally present, when our mind is understanding. Al nafsho's kol Yisrael. We're drawing down God to us, and we're drawing down God to, in a sense, all the Jewish people, because we're all interrelated. So if we do something good, it doesn't only help us, it actually, in a ripple effect, helps every Jew in the world, and in a broader ripples, helps the entire world. He has Shechina. What we're talking about here is the Shechina, which is Kabbalistically the reference of the 10th and final divine attribute, Malchus, sovereignty, of the highest spiritual world, the world of Atzilus. Knesset Yisrael. So this Malchus, this 10th divine attribute, this 10th sphere in the world of Atzilus, which is called Malchus, God's sovereignty, it's the force of God's speech. It's the force of God's action. It's the force of creation. This is very powerful. We have a lot of different ways of referring to it, depending on what aspect we are focusing on. So it's called Shechina. Shechina is from the word root shochen, to dwell. Shechina always implies, and this word is used many times in Hasidic and Kabbalistic thought, a higher level of God energy is descending to vivify a lower level. So Malchus is God's energy of Shechina descending to ultimately descend and create all of the lower realities. So it's a level of Shechina, the Knesset Yisrael. This level, sovereignty, Malchus, of this highest world of Atzilus, is also referred to by the name Knesset Yisrael. Maybe you're familiar with the term Beit or Beis Knesset or Beit Knesset, which is a term for a synagogue, a shul, because it's the idea of the ingathering. In the synagogue, we have all the people. We have all the Jews, Kones, they're all gathered in. So Knesset Yisrael, the ingathering of the Jewish people, of the Jewish souls. Because in this level of God, in this dimension of God, sovereignty, Malchus, of the world of Atzilus, that is the repository of the souls of the Jewish people. As the Rebbe says, Mikar Kol Nishmas Yisrael. We will discuss this later at length, but right now we're just sufficing to say it's a source for all the souls of the Jewish people. So all souls that are not in another dimension, are not down here in this world or in a certain level of Gan Eden above, where are they all hanging out waiting to be sent on their mission? In Malchus of Atzilus, which is called Knesset Yisrael, because it's containing, it's a repository of the souls, as we will discuss at length in chapter 41. Every time we do something godly, it affects primarily you, me, the one who does it, the person who initiated that godly action, godly thought, godly speech, godly study of Torah. That soul most directly is receiving that God energy. As we'll discuss in chapter 41, this very amazing concept. A person could say, I don't want to be doing this for me. I want this to go straight to the Jewish people. And literally, we could say that to God. And then whatever we do, whatever good thing you do, that next bit of charity you give, that next psalm you say, that next Torah you study, that next blessing you make, the credit goes entirely to Knesset Yisrael, to the source of all souls, which means every single soul benefits, your soul as well, of course, but equally. Yours no more than anyone else, and all of the souls. And that's, of course, a great gift. You're giving a gift to the Jewish people and saying, this good, not for me. It's for the Jewish people. But even when you're not thinking that or saying that, and you're not exactly ready to sacrifice your good deed, that it should just be for the majority and not for you primarily, still, every time we're serving God, a part of the energy we're drawing down goes to the level of sovereignty of the world of Atzilus, Malchus of Atzilus, to this energy in Atzilus of Knesset Yisrael, the source of all the souls, referring both to the souls that are not in a world and to all of us in this world, that we have a higher level of our soul connected there. So on a certain level, every Jew that lives or currently that does not live, but is as a soul there, every Jew benefits from the godliness done by any of us. So we're saying, look at what's happening when you're studying Torah, when this level of God, this most intimate level of God, where God is invested like in nothing else, is drawing down to your soul, and in a sense, to all the souls of all the Jewish people. Aide Esek Torah, through one's engagement. Again, as we said, you're not like reading the words mindlessly. No, you're invested, you're focused, you're understanding. If you don't understand, please ask. You're understanding, your mind is holding this. Nikres Belashon Kriya. And that's why we have a very interesting term for our study of Torah. We call it Kriya in Hebrew, which means to call. You might say it means to read, but it really means, Kriya means calling. So we say Koire b'Torah, which means calling by means of the Torah. What does this mean? We're calling by means of the Torah. Peirush, it means to say, that through being engaged in Torah, through being invested in Torah, esek means like a business. Like you can't be, hopefully you're not doing your business while you're spending 90% of your brain thinking about something else. It's not going to be a very successful business. You're invested, you're focused. This is your business. So Torah, for the duration when you're studying it, she's your business. So you're invested, you're focused, you're in there. It's the business, and you're calling to God. What are you saying to God? You're calling to God to come to you. You're asking God, come to me through my study of Torah. Come to me through my study of Torah. To what degree are we calling to God? Kivyachol, so to speak. Like a man calling to his friend, come, oh, so nice to see you, come. Or, like a child calling out to his father, come with me, be with me, be connected to me. Leo's imo b'tzav sachada, to be with him with one bond. Loli parid mimenu, not to be separated from him. Not, God forbid, to be alone. We're calling to the friend. Come, so nice to see you. Hi, so nice to see you. Come over. We're calling to the father. Oh, come. I don't want to be alone. I want to be with you. We're calling to God. Come. We don't want to be alone. God, come. I'm calling you to come to me. How am I calling you to come to me? As I study, I'm koire. I'm calling to you to come to me. And this is what's written. And this is a verse from Psalms that we say in our prayers several times a day in the Ashrei prayer. Karov Hashem l'chol karav. God is close to all who call him. L'chol asher yikru'uhu be'emes. To all who call him in truth. God is close to all who call him. To all who call him in truth. What does this mean to call God in truth? Vein emes ella Torah. What's truth? Truth is Torah. The only thing that's really true in this very transient and very false reality is Torah. So Karav Hashem l'chol karav. God is close to all who call him. And there are many ways to call God. And when we do a commandment, we're calling God. More strongly when we pray. Prayer is an even stronger calling to God. But even stronger than prayer is calling to God by Torah study. L'chol asher yikru'uhu be'emes. All who call God in truth. Who call God through the study of Torah. So when you're studying Torah, you're calling to God. And when you're doing any commandment, in a sense, you're calling to God. And when you pray, for sure, you're calling to God. But Torah studies calling works better. It's a more direct call than even prayer. And the Rebbe is going to explain now why. Zehainu. This means, l'chol asher yikru'uhu be'emes, all who call to God in truth, shekar l'kadosh baruch hu alidei Torah. Dafka. Specifically referring to someone who calls out to God through his study of Torah. La'afuki, to exclude. Mishekara social loyal to Torah. Someone who's calling to God, like in prayer, not through the study of Torah. Abba. Like someone who's saying, Father. Well, that sounds pretty effective. I mean, our prayers are calling to God. Torah study is even more effective. Why? Because as the prophet complains, what is God saying? People are calling, but they're not calling with your name. That's the difference. as is explained in another place. When we do any commandment, it's a call to God. A commandment is like pulling at him. Please come, be with me. He feels the tug. It's a pull, it's a tug, it draws God down. Much stronger pull is when we pray, because when we pray, we're talking to him. We're really pulling, yanking. Torah study does it better. Even better than prayer, as the Navi, by deriving from the Navi's words, Ve'en kora b'shmecha, no one's calling God by name. We understand the advantage of Torah study over prayer. Prayer is calling God, like we say, Father, Father, Tati, Tati, Daddy, Daddy, please come to me. But you might be in a room where there's a lot of fathers or tatis or daddies around. Yours might or might not hear your voice, might or might not turn. Imagine a room full of a lot of people, and you want a certain person's attention. Imagine her name is Hayamushka, or his name is Mendy. In a room full of amateurs. How do you get their attention? Right? Well, then you maybe will use their last name. If you're calling somebody, but you forgot their name, you're like, yeah, her, please. Well, when we're calling to God, that's sort of what we're doing sometimes. We're calling, but we don't know his name. When we study Torah, we know God's name. Why? Because that's what Torah is. Torah is, as we're told, Shmosav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the names of God. Embedded in every word of Torah is God's names. So though you don't realize it, and that's not what you're thinking of, as you say words of Torah, you are calling to God, of course, by name. And just as we can envision, of course, in the metaphor of the person in the room trying to call to someone but not having a name, and who's going to turn and who's not going to turn, versus if you know the name and you call the name and, well, you hear your name, you turn around. So when we study Torah, we are calling God by his name. He turns, he comes, he's with us, which again is reinforcing this concept that we were saying last week, I reviewed briefly at the beginning of this week, that God is more in Torah than he's in anything else. What the Rebbe said was most central concept. That, of course, you're invested in your whole body. And if right now I'm moving my hands, that's obviously me. And if my eyes are seeing things, that's obviously me. But nothing can compare to me and my brain, the source of my whole nervous system, my whole identity. Nothing can compare to God's investment in Torah versus in any other commandment. So similarly, God's more in Torah than in anything else. And now we're adding, and I'm reaching out to him, I'm yanking him down more effectively with Torah than with anything else, because he's more in it, and the call is more direct, because it's calling by his name. How do I know his names? Because that's what Torah is, the names of God. I remember one student, I can say, is from his aunt, so one of from his daughter, Shuli, I remember her very clearly saying when we were learning this chapter quite a number of years ago, oh, that's the beauty of Psalms, of Tehillim, because Psalms, Tehillim, is part of Torah. It's one of the 24 holy books of scriptures. Tanakh, it's Ksuvim. So Psalms, Tehillim is Torah. And yet we say Psalms like a prayer. But so many people have an affinity to pray with Psalms over with the words of a prayer book. And maybe this is why. Maybe we somehow intuitively get it, that when we're saying Psalms as our prayer, we're calling to God, as all prayer calls to God. But Psalms is Torah. So we're calling to God with his direct name. And that's why he comes down with prayer of Psalms. In a sense, maybe we feel more strongly than even the words of the prayer book itself. Very, very powerful concept. And from all of this, a person could think deeply, think through everything we've said. I actually heard last night, I don't remember who, but someone asked Lubavitcher Rebbe, how should he learn a Hasidic discourse, a mimer? And the Rebbe responded that after each section, you should stop and reflect on it. What is the point of this? What is this coming to tell you? And obviously, throughout all of our learning, That's what we would like to do. You're hearing and digesting and hearing and digesting. Stop. Reflect. As the Rebbe is using the term now, be misboining. Understand what we're saying. Sorry, someone just asked me what verse says that Torah is Hashem's name. It's not a pasuk. It's a concept. It's written by the Ramban, Nachmanides, in his introduction to Bereshit, to the very first book of Torah. When he's explaining to us what Torah is, he says it's Shemoisav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the names of God. And that concept is utilized in many, many ways of understanding Torah. Like very often, when you're studying Torah, you would see, like for example, in the Torah portion of Mishpatim, you have these like really long, complicated Rashis. Because Rashi is telling you, well, this verse here, and then we have this verse here. And why do we have both verses? Well, because I need these three words here to understand da 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 da. But I would misunderstand da 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 if not for this verse here and these three words. So I need these three words from here and these three words from here, and I put these two together, and that's how I understand the whole concept. That was a very simplified version of a Rashi that's like this long. And when you study such Rashis and such concepts, and you're thinking, God, I have a great idea. Instead of a verse here with three words and a verse here with three words, make a verse that has all 6 words. We just save yourself another verse. We just save ourselves these mammoth Rashis, which of course are based on mammoth concepts in the Talmud, to explain all this to us. Simplify. God, what a brilliant idea. And God says, that's not exactly what Torah is. Torah is my names. All of Torah is my names. So it's not written only for ease of use and conciseness and best way to understand. It's expressing my names. And very, very often, as I'm saying, I'm just giving like one example, but whenever we're studying, very often we come to this point of saying, but why is it written like this? God's names. These are the names of God embedded in every letter. Sorry, that was a bunch of questions. Now going back to what we're saying. So again, the person, I don't remember if it was a private audience or if it was a letter, asking the Rebbe, how do I study Hasidic discourse? And the Rebbe said, after each section, stop and think, what was that bottom line? What is the, as we call it, bichein? What am I supposed to take away from that paragraph? See if section. So this is what the Rebbe is telling us to do now. I just spent a long time telling you how amazing Torah is. What do I want you to do now? I want you to think about it. I want you to contemplate. Contemplate's a big, scary word. So people sort of say, oh, I guess that doesn't mean me. No, the Rebbe means you. Think, what are all these ideas? What is Torah study accomplishing? The enormity of God coming down, being called by name, and what level of God and God in his essence and being, that's what's in Torah. Think about this. And you know what's going to happen, the Rebbe says? The person with this great intellect that will contemplate these ideas. And again, we don't mean every single idea in this chapter. We mean literally this last page plus, where we're saying how God is in Torah like in nothing else. And we pull him down through Torah like through nothing else. If you just think deeply about that concept, lahamshech alav yira gedayla, you know what's going to happen? You are going to be so full of awe of God when you study Torah. If you understand what's going on, if you understand the God invested in the Torah, and therefore the God coming to you as you call him by name and invoke that God to come to you through Torah, how could you almost possibly study? You know, to study, we have to be open. We have to be able to be thinking. We can be so overwhelmed by this awe that we're in the very presence of God. And how does one learn at that point? We're actually told, our sages say, that every time we study, we have the possibility of recreating the giving of the Torah itself. Ma'amad Har Sinai. And our sages say, just as like by the giving of the Torah, about 3,300 plus years ago, when the Jews were full of awe and fear and dread and sweat, they were in the presence of God. Our sages say we could feel that every time we open up the book, because we are also in the presence of God every time we study. But I don't feel a thing. True. and maybe it makes you a little more functional. But the Rebbe is saying on a certain level, it'd be good to feel. And our sages are saying, it'd be good to feel. It'd be good to feel that awe, that sense I'm in the presence of God, that recreating the giving of the Torah itself. And why am I thinking now I'm in the presence of God? Well, the sages say you are, and the sages say that when you study, God is studying with you. But thinking these ideas, the level of God's investment in Torah, and God's coming down directly to me, I'm calling him by name through Torah, this really creates an awe. Now, awe is a very, very high level. In terms of the ladder of our spiritual relationship with God, we put this great awe as the highest. We have a basic fear of God, and then higher than that, we have a basic love of God. And then much higher than that, we have a very high love of God. And even beyond that is the real awe of God, a real sense of his presence, which creates a real nullification for each one of us. And the Rebbe is saying that's the best way to study. You can say, no, I'll be too distracted. I don't want to be thinking about God. I want to be studying. No, you want to be thinking about God, and you want to study through that paradigm of, and God's right here studying with me. And with that reverence, with that nullification, with that awe, study, as we did discuss this concept above in chapter 23. And that is how we conclude chapter 37 of Tanya. So we had this whole, how are we going to bring redemption? Then this whole understanding of charity as such a powerful tool to bring redemption. And then this whole focus on Torah, which has its own unique value in bringing redemption and unique value. Unique value in bringing God to me. And the final point we're saying is, think about it. Now here the Rebbe spelled it all out for us. He's taking the most precious secrets, right? The crown jewel of God's most precious crown, right? That center jewel, and he's crushing it and making it digestible to our small brains. And then they're saying, please think about what I'm telling you. Please think it over. I know you understand it. Please think about it. Because the bottom line isn't that you have this knowledge in your brain. The bottom line is you have an awe of God in your heart. You feel God's presence. You're nullified to him. That's the point. Because if you feel God's presence, if you feel nullified, if you feel he's here with you now in all of his intensity, your Torah study will be an entirely different experience. And that's what the Rebbe is asking you to do.